And since it's kind of fun to think about the media, I'd like to have us all tell a story. If you have one, just a brief story, because we only have a few minutes.
About how much you hate the media.
About your experiences with the media. So, and I've got a couple of them, which I'll get to and share in a few minutes. I'll kick one off just to start so you can get a flavor of it. And this was when actually Cheryl was helping me in the 1990s. I wrote a book about men. It came out in 1990. And through various sources, it ended up that I was on the Today Show. And it was really exciting. They came to Ann Arbor and they filmed my men's group. And it was a book called Men in Therapy. And they showed this, and so I had my 10 minutes of fame. And then it's like 7:30 and that's done, right, in the morning. And Monday morning, we were in the green room with Miss America and Pete Sampras, who had won his first tennis tournament. So it's all done, and I think, well, okay, my fame is over. And I'm walking across Fifth Avenue. Is it Fifth Avenue? Yeah, I guess it's Fifth Avenue, right here by Rockefeller Center. And it's a beautiful sunny day, and this guy walks by me, and I think, I know who that is, and it's O.J. Simpson. So I say to my wife, that's O.J. Simpson, and I got to go get his autograph. So I run back across the street to get O.J. Simpson's autograph, and he looks at me and he said, did I just see you on TV? And then he said, yeah. He said, I love this men's stuff. You have to send me your book.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it ever got through to him. Let's see if you can top that story around.
Yeah.
So if you could just say who you are, and then if you have a quick story.
I'm Roger Fraser. I'm the former city administrator for the city of Ann Arbor, and more recently the deputy state treasurer for local government, who was responsible for the emergency manager program, and I'm trying to get that down. But my introduction to the media came in Colorado when I was a deputy city manager in Aurora, Colorado, which has had its own fame. But at that time, I became the villain associated with the death of prairie dogs. We had a problem in one of our parks with prairie dog invasion. Our employees said, yeah, we can take care of that. They chose to do it on a morning when all the folks were going by on their way to the mall, and they were out there in their environmental suits that looked like space outfits. And what it did was lead to the formation of an organization called Prairie Dog Rescue. And when they got on film with this tearful scene of a lady holding a prairie dog, I was the villain that showed up on television as the one responsible for killing prairie dogs.
I'm Connie Doyle. I work at St. Joe's in the emergency department, and I also go on deployment at various disasters. When you're part of a team, the feds tell you you can't talk to the media, even if they come around. And we're sitting downtown in New York in the aftermath of 9/11 with lots of different media that we could be nice to and show around, but we couldn't talk to them.
I'm Stephanie Morley. I am most recently the Vice President of Operations at MPI Research in Mattawan, Michigan, and I'm here because I'm looking to relocate to the area. So Rob invited me here. Yes, thank you. And my exposure to the media has been limited, but with plenty of preparation, because we are in preclinical research, which is animal research. And so I'm a veterinarian by trade, so I take it very seriously, but I have to be prepared to talk to the media because the animal activists talk to the media more than we do. So I've had lots of training, but unfortunately never had to use it.
Good morning. My name is Diana Wong, and I'm actually a full-time associate professor at Eastern Michigan University. And I have a side job as CEO and president of Sensei Change. We had created the Shifting Gears program to help transition high-level talent. My encounter with media, one of the most lovely events was Cheryl's departure from Channel 7. Was a beautiful close. I loved that. But my very first encounter with media was on the opposite extreme. And it was a bit of a James Bond adventure with government corruption and front page plastering news nationally in Papua New Guinea about gun running and drug smuggling, all false charges, 29 false charges, involved with the Australian mafia as well, and so it was quite an adventure.
Wow.
The retraction was about 6 months later in a 2-inch column.
So if we Google you, we get that, right? Is it-
No.
My name is Donna Golm, and I work with Wellness and Prevention at Johnson & Johnson Company in Ann Arbor. And I think after that story, I'm kind of lucky. I haven't had any issues or any interface with the media. So,
Roger, you have anything?
Yeah, I'm Roger Rayle. I guess I am, in some regards, part of the media because I do the live streaming here and recording this, and also for several other networking events in my extended transition, which is what I call retirement. But my contact with the media is mostly with the Paul Gelman 1,4-dioxane contamination that's underneath this building and making its way through Ann Arbor, and trying to keep that from more water sources. There's a new homeowner well that got contaminated just within the last couple months. Right now the challenge is getting the data. The company is, their sampling of our waters of the state is being, they're keeping that in their own private database and then releasing monthly summaries of it to the state. We're trying to get that data opened up, so maybe Roger, you have some pull there.
He's good at prairie dog contamination.
Good morning, I'm Tim Lynch. I'm the General Counsel at the University of Michigan. My one media story is when I was a prosecutor back in DC, I had one case that was brought against a very popular local businessman. It was a corruption trial, and there was nothing I could do right with the Washington Post. Every single day, there was a story about how horrible the prosecution was. And then the next case I brought against a less popular person, there was nothing I could do wrong. Every single day was what a wonderful prosecution. And I was the same prosecutor. So.
You wore two hats.
I did.
We want to welcome Tim to town. You're relatively new and came from DC to be the general counsel, so welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Rob.
Jim Winslow. I'm a financial advisor at United Bank and Trust here in Ann Arbor. One story is several years ago, our church had bought a sorority house. We work with a lot of college students and bought a sorority house, and we were going to build an auditorium on the back of the sorority house. And so the city planning department recommended approval for the whole project, and everything was fine and got the variances and so forth. And the city planning commission, there was a lot of back and forth, and the planning commission denied the project, and for various reasons. And so the church decided to file a lawsuit to get this project done. And so the media kind of came in. There was a lot of kind of stories about how a church could actually file a lawsuit, and that was not the right thing to do. That's not being kind and that kind of thing. So it was interesting how that played out in the media.
My name is Dante Vasquez. I'm a student here at the Raw School of Business. And so most recently I was working on the presidential campaign. I was the operations director for Obama's re-election campaign in Nevada. And the transition out there was difficult. The same week I was starting my new job, I was actually trying to finish up my semester and finals. So I'd work all day and then kind of find an all-night coffee shop to grind out my finals. And I was almost done. This is my last final. And I was going to try to take this one in the office. They're timed finals, so you start the final and the clock is ticking. And as soon as I started my final, CNN walked in the office. And I kind of looked around for one of my colleagues to kind of take this one, and there was no one there to take it. Couldn't really explain to CNN that, can you just wait just a second? I got to finish up this operations final. So I didn't do too well on that one, and tried to send an email to my professor that, I saw I didn't do as well as we had hoped on this final, but CNN was in the office, and he didn't understand that either. So I didn't do too well in that course. But.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sunny Sun Chao. I'm from China. I'm the Global Training and Development Manager in Sensei Change. I came here with Diana Wang. And my one story about the encounter with the media is I'm from China. We ban all media, social media. We don't have Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But after I came here, I think Twitter is the biggest thing. I think it, like besides like even more than Facebook and YouTube. Now every day I have to convince myself get off the Twitter because I have to ban Detroit Free Press because they retweet too much.
So you're a Twitteraholic, right?
A little bit.
Good morning, I'm Tom Kerr. I work at the VA hospital here in town, and I'm responsible for one of our performance improvement programs. And my story doesn't involve me, it actually involves Cheryl. I grew up here in southeastern Michigan, and my mom still lives in the area, and I mentioned I was coming to the breakfast this morning, and she's been a big fan of yours. And so she was telling me a story about the story you were covering about a building in Detroit that was on fire. And she said you were the only reporter that was there in the middle of the night, and she felt really sorry for you. So I was given strict instructions to tell you how great you are. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Dane Benson. I'm a franchise consultant. My first exposure with the media was really right after college. I was cutting my teeth in the construction business, and Glenn Hagee asked me to be on the show. And it got postponed 3 or 4 weeks. Turned out it was his first nationally syndicated show. So, right spot, right time.
Ferris Alamy. Actually, I've had lots of encounters with the media, and you know, some good, some bad, some in between. But I will say that what impressed me the most with one of the few last ones is the level of commitment from this media individuals to the digging deeper to understand the stories that they're trying to publicize. Whether they get to it or not, it's just the level was really, really appreciated. And the commitment of time, I mean, one of them spent almost like 2 days with us just searching on, doing more research. So it's kind of like really interesting to see that aspect of it. So thank you for your work.
Hi, I'm Donna Roth. I'm a retired Deputy County Administrator from Washington County. I live in Grand Rapids now because that's where my grandchildren are. But I know Rob since, I think, 4th grade, and Cheryl since maybe before 7th grade. So that's more than the media, that's what I mean.
I'm Ellen Vaughn, and I'm reinventing myself. I've been spending the last couple of years in the process of doing that. And I have actually had the good fortune of flying under the radar screen, so I have no experiences with the media other than being a consumer of it.
I'm Deborah Christine. I'm a partner in B2B CFO, and I think I've had a really exciting life, but it's escaped the media notice. And I think I'm really, really grateful for that.
I'm John Dravenstadt. I'm with Capital Strategies Group, and we do private investment banking work. And I guess my story about the media is that I come from a world where they really don't use media. I mean, they try to avoid it in many ways. The world of private capital, private trading. So we fly pretty much under the radar. But I'm sure you have lots of stories about that.
My name is Ken Fisher. I'm president of the University Musical Society at the University of Michigan. My media story, I just learned that Cheryl was on a 3 p.m. to midnight shift, but I have a family member that was a 3 a.m. to 12 noon shift. Her husband, they were living in Ann Arbor, her husband was traveling at the time. She had to get up and get to her Fox News station. So Uncle Ken was the one that came over to watch the 2 kids for about 6 months. I was up, at 2:30, and then my wife would relieve me at 8. So I have great appreciation for, the kind of time schedule that you have. So that's my media story. By the way, you can hear Jackie Page on News Radio 950 from 10 to 3 every day. And that's the woman. She's now on radio.
I never want to follow Ken Fisher. I was thinking of kind of moving around here, so I didn't have to follow your presentation. It's always Ken's always entertaining. I'm Steve Gill. I have a new company in Ann Arbor, based in Ann Arbor, called Learning to Be Great. It's a virtual marketplace for people to post materials that can be used for organizational improvement and organizational learning. I'm also a trustee of Washington Community College, and that's where I get the media exposure, mostly that I don't want. we have a rule among trustees is that don't say anything that you don't want on the front page of the newspaper. Fortunately, there's no more newspaper, except for the student newspaper, which likes to every March get a Pulitzer Prize and do an expose. So it's quiet most of the year except for kind of late March, and then we have to be careful what we say.
Hi, I'm Joanne Pfeffer. I'm a vocational rehabilitation counselor. I have my own company, and I help individuals who have acquired disabilities go back to work, and I testify in Social Security disability hearings. So, no media experience.
Hi, Marvin Parnes, Managing Director, Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan, where I've also been the Associate Vice President for Research for many years. And one thing I wanted to comment on are the number of journalists and media people who do a lot of deep background research at the university. And I think many people know about the Knight Wallace Fellowship that brings journalists on campus for an extended period of time. But we have many, many, many people who use the resources at the university to develop background for lots and lots of articles and material.
Hi, I'm Pam Sexton with United Bank and Trust, and my media encounter was in 2004. I was lucky enough to be awarded the Athena Award, and the Ann Arbor News came out I was coaching my daughter's basketball team, and they took a picture of me teaching the girls how to guard. So my butt's in the paper, and every time I see a gentleman in the area who I see quite often here.
I always pick the worst picture.
Good morning. I'm Patricia Garcia. I publish the Ann Arbor Observer. I have absolutely no encounters with media. I don't have any specific stories, but this is a typical example of what might happen when I'm in a social situation. And Cheryl, you could probably identify with this. You're having a conversation with a small group of people. Someone is telling a story, a rather revealing story about their business or something that's happened to them recently or in the community, and they don't know my business. And another person will interrupt them and say, "Excuse me, do you know who's in this group?" The publisher of the Ann Arbor Observer, and all of a sudden the story ends immediately. And I try to assure them I have no hidden microphone. I handle the business side of the business. I'm not taking notes, but it really does affect the way people communicate once they realize that you're involved in the media.
Hi, I'm Lee Berry, and I'm the Chief Development Officer for the Michigan Theater in Ann Arbor. And I've been in the media world really for about over 30 years, doing concerts and events and festivals and such. And for all this time, one of the challenges, I don't have a particular story, but the theme has always been trying to convince major Detroit area media that Ann Arbor is not just a place where there's a university and 30,000 college students, we're part of the metro area.
And an art fair.
And art fair, exactly. So trying to kind of break that caricature has always been my mission.
Good morning, my name is Pat McKeon. I am a commercial lender with North Star Bank. We're a Michigan-based bank who is opening an office in Ann Arbor. I guess the first encounter I had with the media was back in high school at Pioneer. A few of us got into a little trouble for leaving campus, and our punishment was to plant some trees along South 7th there, and apparently the media got a hold of it and came out and took some photos and interviewed us, and we were in the newspaper, and everybody thought we were great people because we were volunteering to plant trees. And the moral of the story is don't believe everything you read.
Hi, I'm Barb Muley. I work at the University of Michigan, and my media story is I worked on Capitol Hill for 6 years for a senator, and we were surrounded by media, sometimes challenging, but mostly good. And my own personal experience was probably tripping over all the wires that were running through my office.
I'm Jeff with Dexter Builders. I like to say I'm just the last one paid there. So 2 and 2 together works, hand in hand. our biggest media exposure was the tornado that blew through Dexter. We ended up doing nearly 200 jobs from it, and would get calls and stuff. And as things wrapped up, a national roofing magazine called, and I didn't take it very serious. And they showed up with like 3 or 4 writers and a couple photographers, and we ended up being on the cover of a magazine.
All right.
I never expected that. So I think I learned you've got to ask some questions about who you're dealing with.
My name's Rachel, I'm Rob's assistant, and my only encounter with the media happened this week when I was interviewed about that awful bridal shop in Milan that unfortunately had a lot of girls in a lot of trouble with their weddings.
Okay, and Dawn's here. Dawn, do you have a story? Or
Most of my experience in the media has been professional. I'm the founder and chief technology officer of a high-tech company, and it's my second one. And my experience has just been how hard it is for engineers and scientists to figure out how best to tell their story, in a way that's helpful to the media and gets the message across and doesn't descend into inappropriate details.
all right. Well, we cover everybody. Good. All right. Well, if we could take our seats and then we'll do introductions. Grab. We don't actually have to grab coffee because it will be. People will bring it around for you. This is good right here. You want to stand? All right, well, we're going to get started. They're going to bring food and coffee around so people could have a seat and it will get to you. I wanted to start out by just an introduction to Cheryl. And where's Donna? I saw Donna. Okay, Donna's over here. So Donna and Cheryl and I all went to Paul L. Best School in Oak Park, Michigan. Elementary school. So, and I like to say that Cheryl is the same Cheryl that I knew then. She's always a very friendly, everybody's friend, outgoing. And we went through school all through high school and even first year at Wayne together. So, where she met her husband and then had kids pretty early, so in your 20s, right? You had two kids in your 20s.
Married at 19.
And great story. Maybe you could tell the story that you told about how you got your first job, bringing your kids to work with you, and the interview and whatever, or to the interview. So she's done great, and I've been, all very interested in her career, very proud of what Cheryl's done. And it's pretty cool that from this one little elementary school, Cheryl has been a great reporter. There's been other people who have done great things, and we had a speaker here, Bill Schmidt, a couple of years ago. I don't know if any of you were here, but Bill was the managing editor of the New York Times, and he came out of the same classroom. So some teacher must be very proud of her ability to have taught us to communicate.
Was it Mrs. Barrett? Was she our English teacher?
Could have been Mrs. Barrett. Yeah. Did anybody have Mrs. Lancaster? That goes way back to Jackson School. Mrs. Lancaster was a terrific teacher who every day had us recite the Lord's Prayer, not the Lord's Prayer, but the 23rd Psalm, and freaked us all out about, what the hell is this Valley of Death thing? As a 6-year-old saying that. And then she also dressed up as the scariest witch you've ever seen. You remember that? And freaked us all out. So, you think she was a really freaky teacher, but then she actually was very beloved. She was a great teacher. So, and then Cheryl has had the opportunity through her work at Channel 7, before that at Radio 950, WWJ. And she's been very helpful to me in promoting some of my books, so I greatly appreciate that. But she has interviewed Nelson Mandela, she's interviewed Bill Clinton, and Pope John. Is that correct?
I didn't interview them, but I was there when they made their statements. I wanted to correct that. Because
oh, okay. It was in the paper, yeah.
Nobody gets to sit down with the Pope and do a one-on-one. Would that be cool?
Well, this new Pope you might.
Maybe.
The new Pope you might be able to.
But when the Pope came to Hamtramck and everything, I was there when Nelson Mandela jumped on.
Very, very cool. So it's with great pleasure that I present our retired Channel 7 reporter who's now doing lots of workshops, and I've talked to a few of you about her being interested in doing training for your staff who have to deal with the media about the best way to do that. And it's not just about avoiding the negative, which some of you talked about, but it's also making the media your friend and how to take advantage of what the media has to offer. Some of you have mentioned the great reporting that happens. Cheryl?
Okay. Well, I'm going to use a microphone, I guess, so if it's better for the videographer or the shooter, we call them a shooter, but and one more thing I just want to tell you about teaching, about teachers that Rob and Donna might remember, that Miss Jorgensen, do you remember Mrs. Jorgensen? Well, actually, I retired like 6 weeks ago from Channel 7. She was our teacher in high school, and we've been out of high school a long time, and she sent me a gorgeous note about, she had sent me a note through the years about she watched a story I did, and why I looked so cold, and you know, she was so proud of me, but she sent me a lovely note. Anyways, I wanted to tell you, I'm gonna, Rob had asked me to talk about, which I certainly am going to talk about dealing with the media, and I really want to now that I heard all your stories, but also a little bit about what I did and some of the stuff, the stories that I've covered. So I am so happy though to be here this morning, and because, as I was saying to a few of you, I cannot tell you how many stories I covered when I would be on the outside covering the story, saying, I just wish I could get in there and talk to somebody about telling them that if they would just come out and say something, we would go away. You know, I mean, sometimes people have, I don't know why, but people do, or maybe some of you do know why. Some people have a general dislike of the media. The hair on the back of their neck stands up when they see reporters or the news truck coming. But I would want to say to them, a nugget. You can say nothing but say something, and we might go away. And also always keep in mind that, you know, reporters don't choose their assignments usually. I mean, they were sent there, so you know, don't kill the messenger, that kind of thing. But I want to share some thoughts about what I did at Channel 7 and about how to deal with the media. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I did retire 7 weeks ago, and it's so funny because every restaurant I go to, every place I go, people have come up to me and said, so Cheryl, how's retirement? And I said, well, it's only been 7 weeks, and I went camping for 3, and I've been writing thank you notes for another 3, and I've been putting a resume together. I said, but it's great, you know. And actually, since I've retired, believe it or not, I've emceed 2 events, one for Haven, which is a wonderful, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Haven. It's a shelter for women who've been sexually abused, domestic violence. They asked me, I emceed an event for them and for a walk at the zoo to promote cancer research for ovarian cancer. I did that. And I have 5 speaking engagements coming up. I'm actually so excited. I was saying that U of M invited me, the drama department, to come talk to their voiceover class. I've spoken here. I've got a couple others. I'm going and emceeing some more events. So I've been really busy. And I spent a lot of time. It was so funny because I want to teach. One of the reasons I left is because I want to teach journalism, not full-time. But when I was talking to somebody from one of the universities, they said, well, send me your resume. And I said, okay. And then I went home and I thought, I don't have a resume. so I've been spending a lot of time putting together my resume. And then I should have brought one actually, just so you could look at it. But I put together my resume and I got some new business cards because I have all my Channel 7 cards and I was crossing out my work number and putting my new cell number. It's so funny, the young man, Simon Shaquette, who was hired, not necessarily to fill my spot, but they gave him my cell phone. So he calls me last week and said, your doctor called with the results of your physical. He said, and your nephew called, they're having a birthday party for your sister-in-law. So I said, Simon, I'm so sorry. I said, I hope you get some good tips on that phone. But anyways, let me tell you this. I retired 6 weeks ago, and I decided to leave a job that I totally loved. I loved my work at Channel 7, and if you watch me, I think you could even tell that I loved it. I mean, it was a wonderful job. And my contract was coming up in May, and my bosses fully expected me to sign a new contract, and they wanted me to stay. But I had decided that if I didn't stop doing this, I would never do anything else. I would do the teaching. I want to volunteer with young people to help them make good decisions so they don't end up on the 11 o'clock news. And I want to, so I want to volunteer. I want to talk with businessmen and women about dealing with the media, so some of the concerns they have about the media maybe can go away, can be dispelled, some of the feelings they have, and teach them how to deal with the media, because there is certainly a way. So I decided that if I couldn't I couldn't do that if I stayed. I worked 3 to midnight every night, which was all consuming. And my job was really, it wasn't 3 to midnight, it was 24/7. I mean, I would start in the morning to start looking for my stories or background on my stories, or my colleagues would call me from, the dayside reporters would call me from the story I did the night before, or we'd brainstorm. So it was really, I mean, I loved it, but it was all encompassing. So it was either work, and I have 3 grandkids and my husband and my kids, so it was family and work, you know, and not that and I will continue to do that, but I thought I needed to cut back so I could do some other things. While I was at 7, if you watch me, I did cover breaking news, developing news, ongoing news, a little bit of investigative, although every story was kind of investigative. And actually, sometimes, and I don't know if you saw any of these stories, I would be on the air for a couple hours. There was an explosion in Royal Oak at this house where this man died just recently. It was maybe 5 months ago, or it was a gas explosion. And they sent me there, and the second I got there, and it was still cold, the second I got there, I'm on my cell phone with a witness because we didn't even have time to set the truck up. So I'm interviewing a witness, the woman who lived next door to the house where the man died. A man died, he was thrown out and from his house, thrown out into the street. And this is in front of me, basically. I'm interviewing the witness on the phone, Joanne Purden, our anchor, and they're talking to me while my cameraman is setting up the live truck. And we literally transitioned from me being on the phone with the witness to being on TV with the witness. The same witness I was talking to on the phone. I'm standing there and let me just move this for a second. I'm standing there on the phone with the witness. My cameraman is literally putting on, you know, you have to put on like it's called IFB, it's my earpiece, you know, that was already in because I knew I'd be on live. We transitioned. I was on the air for 2 hours straight. So that's no break. And I'm hearing my station in my ear, but I'm literally bringing our viewers into breaking news and letting them watch breaking news as it's developing. I even said to Joanne Purden, who was anchoring her, and she was anchoring with, I can't remember who she was anchoring with that day, but I said to her, I remember saying, Joanne, do you guys want to stay with me, or do you want to go take a break or come back to me? Because I had no direction. I'm interviewing witnesses live, which is risky, because, you know, you don't know what they're going to say. They could have said, oh my God, this thing just freaking exploded, but they could, you know, they could. So you have to be so careful. And a lot of people want to be on TV, even though a lot don't. And they might say, oh, I know what happened. I saw it happen. So it's challenging. And when the tanker exploded on I-75 at 9 Mile Road, another situation, I was on for more than 2 hours. I was on the air literally while the police were moving me. We were on the air and the police were moving us. And I was on for a long time. When Timothy McVeigh was arrested for the federal building bombing, we were out in Decker with the Jim Nichols Farm, do you remember that? And we were on live for a long time, and all of our sister stations were taking us, so I was on live all over the country. And this is kind of not a funny story, it was terrifying, the bombing was horrific. The arrest of Timothy McVeigh was this Michigan connection. So Frank Turner was our anchor at the time, and I'm only about 5'3½" maybe, but I was with a cameraman who I just saw Saturday night because Channel 7 had this big reunion, but he's long retired, and he's 6'4", and the sheriff up there was holding a press conference. So here I am, moving myself into the middle of like maybe 50 reporters, asking the sheriff a question, all live on TV. Then we kind of scooch out of this whole thing, turn around, I'm giving them what the sheriff said. And then he said, can you go ask the sheriff another question? So I'm moving myself back in, moving myself back out. So, I mean, it's so funny because it's not funny, but some people have no idea. Many of you seem to have an idea. Some people have no idea what we do. A woman was interviewing me, she said, well, where does the makeup person go when you're at a homicide? So I said, okay, I said, so here's the makeup person. This is the makeup person. And you know something, in all honesty, and this is the truth, if I'm in a homicide scene, if somebody has lost a loved one and they're standing next to my truck, I would feel disrespectful to pull the visor down and put makeup on before I go on the air. I mean, I know that's kind of strange because I want to look good on my report, but if somebody's sobbing because they just lost a child or a loved one, I am not going to feel disrespectful and put on makeup. Whereas I have seen reporters with a makeup bag that is as big as Nordstrom's would have, you know, on the dashboard. I would never do that. But anyway, so I've been on the air for many hours at a time. And when you do that, you have to be so careful not to be redundant, not to be saying, not that I do, I don't. But I've seen reporters, you know, what do you say for 2 hours? Well, you say the truth, you say what you're seeing, you try to get interviews. It's not easy. I have a little bit of a gift of gab. I'm so fortunate that I do. One time, I was in the mayor's office and we took a hit. Our satellite took a hit, and I was the only live shot they could get. I was at Dennis Archer's office, and they just kept saying, keep going, Cheryl, keep talking, in my ear. You know, my director was saying it. So, but you have to be careful that that you're only saying what's true. You can't start spewing off things that just neighbors are telling you. And you have to say and keep it interesting and keep it challenging and let people know, like on I-75 where I was, keep repeating it so they would stay away. So I've done that, you know, but I wanted to tell you that through my reporting, I can let you know if the story is worrisome to you, dangerous, if it's sad, for sure, if it's happy. I can do that through my demeanor, my voice, my expression, without being overly dramatic. And the reason I'm saying that is since I've retired, I watch Channel 7, of course, and 4 and 2, but I watch with a critical eye. And I saw a reporter recently, there was a terrible story about a girl's boyfriend who killed her 2-year-old little boy, a darling little boy. And she was doing the report, and she was so dramatic that I wanted to shake her. She was like, it's so sad, and he threw him, and it was just, and he was going to be charged, and I thought, oh my God, like, you know, you're a reporter, you know, you're not just a neighbor telling another neighbor a story, so you have to keep that professionalism at all times. Sometimes it's not easy. The stories are horrific. I did a story once about a dad who lined up his 5 kids on the couch and shot them all because he was mad at his wife. I mean, it's the kind of story you want to say, that guy's sick. You want to say that. You don't say that. But so through my demeanor, my voice, I think you can tell what the story is about. And people have said that to me, and that's a huge compliment. I'm happy that I don't have to get, oh, dramatic. You know, you don't want to do that. You have to keep that professionalism at all times. I've had some really good exclusives in my career. I was the only, and to me, how many times do you see on the exclusive underneath? Exclusive, exclusive. To me, an exclusive is, what it means to me, is a story that everybody wants and you're the only one who has. So when the limo driver crashed with the Red Wings, do you remember that? His name was Richard Gonida. He had been smoking marijuana. I don't know if you remember that story. I was the only reporter in town to talk to him, one-on-one. And the way I got that is I kind of knew his lawyer, and I said, I think people want to hear from this guy. You know, does he feel bad? These are the Red Wings. I sat in a lawyer's office, this is not exaggeration, for 6 hours. Because he couldn't decide if he wanted to, and then he shaved, then he changed clothes, then he wasn't going to, then he was. I literally sat there for 5.5 or 6 hours, and I did get the interview. And I was the only reporter he ever spoke to. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then there was another one that is sad, but there was an Oakland University co-ed who was doing a thesis or a paper on escorts, and she became an escort. And she died. She was killed by one of her customers, her Johns. And I had a very good relationship with the police. I've always had a good relationship with the police because they can trust me. Anyways, when her body was found, not that you want to brag about being the first or the only, but we were the only station there when they discovered her body. And of course, the second you get it on the air, everybody else, you start seeing the trucks just coming like crazy. You know, everybody wants to be first in our business. But I always tell students, and I hope to do this when I teach, it's great to be first, but only if you're right. Only if you've got the facts. If you're first and wrong, to me, you might as well not even be on the air. So it's very, very important to check your facts all the time. And I think if you know that you have a reporter, and you build a trust with the reporter, and you know it is a reporter that would check the facts, you feel more comfortable. Because some reporters are loose, there's no question about it. Loose with facts. Well, I heard it from a neighbor. He said there were 3 kids who died in that house. Really? Because nobody was in the house. No, I'm just saying, you have to be so careful. As Rob was saying, I've had some really good experiences. I flew with Bill Clinton before when he was running for president the first time. That was really a blast. I got to fly all over Michigan and Illinois, and then I ended up at our Chicago station. I did the station there. I was there when Nelson Mandela came, and when the Pope came. That was very, very exciting to be there in a throng of reporters, local and network, and to see that. Those are history-making events, to be part of that. And also, I don't know if how many of you, well, the ones who are local will remember Coleman Young, but, you know, who could forget Coleman Young? But I sparred with Coleman Young a lot, and I was a rookie reporter then, and he tried to take me down. He really did, on TV. We used to have a show, we still have it, called Spotlight on the News. Jim Harrington used to host it. Jim, rest in peace, he's passed away recently, but the mayor was on. Coleman Young did not like the media, and that's when the Krugerrands, it was all about the Krugerrands and everything, and I had asked him a question, and he really tried to take me down on TV. I stood my ground without question, but people still come up to me. This is the honest to God truth. They still come up to me in Detroit and say, I remember you with Coleman Young. That was like 20 years ago. And then I, you know, even though he didn't like the media, we went out to lunch, the mayor and I, and we, of course, made peace, and everything was fine. And then I covered his funeral, and it was, you know, kind of hard. That was hard. You know, there are some times when people say to me, you cover such sad stories, how do you keep from crying? You know, and we don't keep from crying. Many times when I'm talking to families who have lost a loved one, you bond with them for those few minutes. And you do cry with them, you know. And but when you go on the air, you try to pull it together, and you try to somehow just get yourself, somehow I have a trick that I play in my mind, or something that, you know, you don't say anything that's going to make you cry at that moment. You know, you could say, I just try to keep it straight. And then because the middle of your story, if you've seen me live, the beginning is live, and then they go to a taped piece that I've tracked and edited. And then, so it's very difficult. I still stay in contact with some of those families. This is not like, I mean, knock on the door, try to interview them, get a picture, and leave. I mean, I will write notes after. And even when I retired, there's a couple situations. One is in Eastern Michigan, actually. It's the young woman who died in the off-campus. And I became, her family trusted me, and I became, you know, professionally friendly with them. And when I retired, of course, I called. It was, you know, it was the night. It was she's a twin and everything. I called her mom. I said, this is my cell. This is my new cell. And even though your story isn't over, feel free to call me if something's happening with the story, and then I'll call the station and make sure it gets on. So I stayed in. 2 Westland boys were murdered. They were out to buy a little bit of marijuana, but they came up with the wrong drug dealers. I'm not saying, you know, and their case has not been, and I gave their mom. So there are still plenty of families who I have stayed in contact with. I mean, well, I've only been retired 6 weeks, but I'm saying I have a different cell phone now. I'm not at the station, but I still am in contact with people. So you bond with those people. And one of the questions that people always ask me, they say, why does the media always go up to the door? And why do they try to go and knock on the door? Well, number one, you want to put a face on the story. After the Navy Yard shooting, the next day, all the networks had a picture of everybody who was killed and interviews with some of the families. It's just because it puts a face on the story. And there's a way to do it. When I go up to, and even to the last week that I worked, so look how long I've been in the business, I would always get a little pit in my stomach if I had to go knock on a door. But we would never pull the truck up in front of the house, because a grieving family, the last thing they want to see is a TV truck. We'd park down the street. I myself would walk alone without my cameraman, without a microphone or anything, knock on the door, tell them I was so sorry for their loss, tell them who I was. Most often people would know who I am, just because I've been on TV a long time, which was one way that, you know, it's hard to be, you can't be like inconspicuous. But anyways, I would often say, you know, I'm so sorry for your loss, and you know, we're here, we'd like to tell your story, would you like to share it? many times they would welcome me in, a hug, a squeeze, a hand squeeze I would give them. Sometimes they would slam the door. People, you know, I would have the door slammed at me, people screaming at you, friends and relatives like, you know, working interference for you, out there, don't you dare come in. So all kinds of situations. It's not an easy thing to do. It is not, it's very, very difficult. I'll tell you one quick thing about that. There was a story a while ago where a mom turned into the orthodontist in 12 Mile Road in Southfield. Do you remember that? And she and her 2 sons were killed. And her husband is a jeweler, Gary the Weinsteins. So my station said they wanted me to go and try to talk to him. His wife and 2 sons were killed. This is like 5 hours after. I mean, I could barely even think about doing it, but they said, you know, give it a try, everybody else is going to be doing it. And as it turned out, he was in shock. And I could tell that the husband was in shock. And so I feel like I'm a good person, you know, and I feel like I'm an honest and truthful reporter. I would never have taken advantage of him. He did an interview with me, but his rabbi was there with him. And I remember stepping in the kitchen and saying, it was a woman, her name it's Rabbi Colton. I remember saying, Gary said he will do an interview with me. Do you think he means it? Is he okay? Do you want to sit with him? And she did, and he did. And then he never talked to another reporter after that also. So it just so happened that, so it's not easy. We've had to do a lot of things. Seriously, we have. It's not easy. I'm getting off track here because I don't want to. I want to make sure that I've told you everything. So anyways, so that's basically what I've done. And one more thing I want to tell you before I move on to working with the media, because this will be interesting to all of you. When I first got my writing job at Channel 7, okay, so I want to tell you how I got my job started for sure. I went to Wayne State. I'm an English speech major. I taught school for a year. I stopped. We had 2 kids quickly. So I was working in a co-op nursery because we didn't have much money, so the moms participated in nursery. I walked into the Southfield Eccentric office with 2 kids, 1 on each hip, pigtails, and blue jeans, true. And I thought to give them a press release about the nursery school. And I thought, you know, I bet I could do some freelancing here. I said, is the editor here? And the editor came out, I shook his hand, I introduced myself. I said, could I come back without the pigtails and the kids and the jeans and talk to you? And he said, yes. And I went out and bought my first suit, and that suit is still in my closet. It still is, that's true. And I started freelancing for the Southfield Eccentric. I earned 50 cents a copy inch. I paid a babysitter more than I earned, but I was getting a byline. Anyways, long story short, then I started writing for the Detroit News. Then I started writing for Channel 7. I so wanted that job. 2 weeks after I had the job, new management came in and fired 12 people on a Friday. They called it Black Friday. And then the boss, who 2 weeks I had been there, came up to me and said, Cheryl, you know, we're going to let you go. We're going to bring in our own people. This is also true. His name was Joe Barnes. He was sitting down like where you're sitting, and I sat on a desk. I don't know what gave me the gumption to do this. I said, you know what, Joe? I cannot let you fire me. I said, I've only been here 2 weeks. You don't even know me. I said, so here's what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to work free for 2 weeks, and I'll write for the news. And if you don't like what I do, then fire me. Well, of course, he never fired me, and that was, look at how many years later that is a true story that I did that. And then when people hear that now, they think, oh my God, that took a lot of guts. It did, but it was like I was going to lose my job that I had for 2 weeks for no reason other than a new management team came in. Anyways, so going back to the trust, I feel like people trust me. I think that, and there's reason they trust me because I'm trustworthy, because I keep my confidences, and so all of you, I feel like, especially the ones who said that they haven't had a good experience with the media, you should be able to trust us because we could be your friend. The media is your friend. You could use the media to your benefit. Now, honestly, I understand how shocking it must be, and here's a scenario, and this is a real story. So the feds are coming in to raid a corporation. Are they raiding the corporation or one person who had some bad taxes and, you know, they want to look at his desk or whatever? Because usually federal officials aren't that open with their conversation with the media. I am sure it's shocking I am sure to a boss, to the executives, it is a shocking thing to have your business rated, unless you're doing something wrong, then it might not be so shocking, and it might still be shocking. And then to see news trucks start rolling up. It's upsetting. I'm sure it is. But the absolute worst thing you could possibly do is to shut down away from the media. I feel that, I know it's a shock, and I know it's a negative story, and I know it's not going to give you good PR, but the best thing you could do is to come out and say something, or issue a statement, or say we are as surprised as anybody, we have to look into it, and we'll get back to you. Please give me your phone number. Again, like I said, I always tell, we're all adults, we control what we say, so you can say nothing by saying something. You could say we have no comment, but the worst thing to do is to hang up the phone, which I've had secretaries or assistants, you call up and say, hi, this is Cheryl Chodun, I'm sorry to call you from the media, click. That's a terrible thing to do. Or to scream and shout and say, get off our property, or to not say anything at all. Because what is that reporter going to say on their story? We tried to call them, but someone hung up on us. Or we reached out, but nobody got back to us. Or, we've been calling, and we can't get a statement. And you know what happens? Then it becomes a one-sided story, because you don't have the other side. Let's just say, what if it's a corporation and 150 people work there, and one person in the corporation is under investigation, and the feds have come in and they're taking they're looking at that person's records or boxes or computer, and it really has no reflection on the company. I mean, not that you're going to spill out all of that to the media, but even a one-line sentence. It is so much better than not saying anything at all. I really feel that, and I hope that you would take that with you and share that with others, because one sentence could mean the world of difference in the way it's reported. So that's a negative story, and I mean that's when there's a negative story. When there's a positive story, always use the media to your benefit. Always use the media to your benefit. The media is your friend. I mean, seriously, the best thing to do is to try to kind of seek out a reporter you trust and you know. You can do that by even asking around. I mean, I cannot tell you, and I feel almost not embarrassed to say it, but I'm humble about it, but people would say, I know I can trust Cheryl. I know I can trust her because others have told me that she's good on her word. But you can ask around, but if it's a positive, you don't have to worry about it. But I'm just saying, if you're donating money to Hurricane Katrina, if you're adopting a school, if you're mentoring children, if your company is giving a grant to somebody, absolutely utilize the media. It is so positive. You can call a press conference. If you call a short press conference, then you're talking to everybody at the same time. You don't have to do a lot of one-on-one interviews, and it's, which takes a lot of time. And it's wonderful. And then if you develop a good relationship with a reporter, then that reporter can help you. I will never forget this also. My investigative unit was doing a story about one of the sheriff's departments. I won't say which one, but one of the sheriff's department's PR person called me. I had nothing to do with the story. Well, I know that he called me to try to get the story pulled, which of course I would have no power to do that. But when he started to tell me that we offered boxes of information and the reporter didn't look at them, and we want to give him proof and the reporter already has his or her mind made up, well, I ended up calling my bosses and saying, can you at least talk to this person before the story airs? And they did hold the story until they had further information. One of you was saying that somebody came in who was saying that reporters came in and utilize the information. So if you develop a friendship with a reporter and a trust, you can always go through that person. But if not, I would have your assistants, if you have good news, one of your assistants get emails for Channel 2, 4, 7, the Observer, the Patch, the Ann Arbor News, whatever, the Free Press, the news, and call a press conference. And if you don't want to call a press conference, you could send a press release also. And if you're a large corporation or company or even medium size, you could designate one person to talk to the media. But if you do, make sure that person is, number one, so well versed on everything that they would be talking to the media about, and also someone who's comfortable. So often, especially in police departments, classic, it's probably a police officer who maybe isn't, not that they're not doing a great job, but maybe they're not great on the street or great investigators. They end up being the PIO, that's the public information officer. They're terrible on camera. You know, terrible. They're terrible at getting you the information. They play favorite. I mean, so whoever you would designate would have to be someone who you felt was really comfortable being on air, and really and well versed on each subject that they would be talking about. I mean, we always laugh. We would laugh. We'd say, okay, we're going to call public information, and they're going to say it's early in the investigation. We can't say anything. And they would always say, it's early in the investigation, we can't say anything. Now, I think you were bringing up a point about the privacy. You know, a lot of hospitals have the HIPAA, and the university has some privacy laws as well. So oftentimes there are things you can't say, but you can say that. You can say that because of, we can't say. Hospitals will often say that to us, and I understand that. Or they might say, because of this we can't say it specifically, but we could give you a general answer. You know, we can't talk about the patient. Like with the meningitis in St. Joe, you know, I mean, I went up there and they had a doctor available for me, and they were so willing to help me. It just so happened, when I walked in the lobby, it was right at the height of it, a man was coming in, and I mean, you know, sometimes you have to do that. I said, excuse me, sir, but are you involved at all? He said, yeah, my wife got the shot. She's upstairs. And so he spoke to me, and the hospital allowed me to speak to him. Whereas sometimes you have to go off campus or off site to do an interview. So anyways, working with the media is just such a bonus for you. I think that, like I said, the absolute worst thing to do would be to hang up or to slam a door. You can also set boundaries with the media. There's nothing wrong with coming out if you want to and saying, you know what, we need you to be off our property. We appreciate that you have a story to do, but we need you to be off the property, so you're going to need to park across the street. And we are going to try to get someone to come out and speak to you. Or please give me your numbers or your emails, because we're going to get somebody to issue a statement. And again, like I'm saying to you, it could be such a nothing statement. It could be, we have no comment right now, we're looking into it, we'll get back to you, we're disappointed. If somebody died like in a plane crash, for example, that's a horrific thing. And then you're going to go to his work and, you know, whatever, but maybe they would say, you know, we'd like some privacy right now to grieve. Our thoughts are with the family. It could be anything. So much better than the reporter standing there and saying, I tried to reach out to them, but you know, they kicked us off the property and hung up on us. It just looks bad. It looks bad. It looks guilty. Not that anybody is guilty, but it makes you look guilty. It doesn't look good. There's no question about that. So it's so funny. I write a speech and then I just keep talking and I don't follow it, which is probably better anyways. I just want to make sure I haven't left anything out.
You look great.
Huh? Yeah, you know, I mean, I just want to make sure also too, with your dealings with the media, you want to reward honesty. I mean, oh, here's the other thing. This is so important too. This is on, I put some tips around too. There's nothing wrong with saying to a reporter, you could say it or I would say it. Can we go off the record? I might say to somebody, can we go off the record? Can we go on background? I want you to know what those mean. And they mean different things to different reporters. Off the record usually means, can we go off the record? Okay, so can we go off the record? Is anybody in custody? And so an officer might say to me, yeah, we got two, we picked up the two guys. But I wouldn't just go with that. I'd have to take the off the record and try to get it on the record from somebody else. So off the record generally means I'm giving you some it could mean two things. I'm giving you some information, you need to get it somewhere else confirmed. Or it could mean I'm giving, let's say it's the CEO of the company, I'm giving the information, but you cannot attribute it to me. It can't come from me. So you would have to say, let's say, I'll give you just an example. Let's say there was a federal investigation, and I had a good contact with a prosecutor on the case who told me something really important, like somebody's on the witness list, or, you know, or Kwame's not going to get bond, or whatever, you know. I'll get to Kwame in a moment, but because that's a story in itself. But okay, so then that person tells me that, but they say you could say sources close to the investigation, or sources, solid sources, reliable sources, sources high up in the corporation are telling us tonight. So off the record can mean either no attribution to you, or it could mean this can't come from me. I'm telling you this, but get it somewhere else. If someone says, I want to go on background, let's go deep background. Deep background means not a word of this from me, but so you understand the story. You know, we've hired this guy and now we're sorry we did because we found out that he had a history over in, you know, in Massachusetts somewhere. So call there and find out. Just giving you some background. But beyond the two terms, off the record, and usually more off the record is used. And you know, it's funny because I even called a couple of my fellow reporters at Channel 7 yesterday. One's in the investigative unit and one is someone I trust totally. Because I wanted to see if my interpretation, the way I use off the record, was the same as the way they did. And it was. So, and I would often say, can we go off the record? But you could also say, can we go off the record? And because the reporter might say to you, no, because everything you say to me is on the record, you know. And now, this is not going to be attributed to me, right? I mean, you could clarify it with the reporter so that you totally understand what they've said to you. Sometimes I'd say, can we go off the record? And then we'd talk and I'd say, okay, we're back on the record now, so that they would know. The other thing is too, believe me, I feel bad having to say this, but because I think most of the people in the Detroit media are honorable and good and great reporters. And we're men and women, brothers, sisters, moms, dads, grandmas. I'm a grandma. You know, I mean, you could trust most, but once in a while, I mean, I went up to a door once to talk to a woman and she said, I do not want to be photographed. I do not want to be on camera. So I honored it. And I saw one of my competitors like this, with the mic down here, and his cameraman was at the street. So I knew exactly what was going on. So I said to the woman right there, and it wasn't a comfortable situation, I said, you know what, let's stop talking because somebody is recording you right now. I mean, I outed them right away because I was honoring what she wanted, but was not going to have the interview, and they weren't, and they were going to have it. And they did, and they used it. I have seen a reporter interview someone, this is so true, who had Alzheimer's. And it was a grandma to a suspect. And I knew that she had dementia, and this other reporter went and interviewed that woman and used it. And I thought, oh my God, how could that, you know? So, but that's probably the exception. That is totally the exception. So the last thing I wanted to tell you was about Kwame, real quickly, and then I want you to ask some questions. Kwame Kilpatrick is a classic example. I mean, I don't even have to tell you that. I mean, I knew his mom for a long time before because of her politics, but when he came into office, and you could ask anybody, you could go right across the board in Detroit. Everybody thought this young man had so much hope and promise. If you heard his first inaugural address in the Fox Theater, he thanked his grandpa and his grandma. And I wrote him a note, a handwritten note, saying, you know, this is great. You know, the city's it's a breath of fresh air. And look at, he's going to prison. Why? I don't know why, but power, maybe the people he hung around with, I don't know what happened to him. But here's a guy who we thought was the answer for Detroit. And look at what's happened to Detroit right now. And someone had asked me if I see stories being done now that I'm retired, do I wish I was there? You know something? It's an adjustment. I don't necessarily wish I was there. It's like I wish I could tell the person who's reporting how to do the story. It's crazy, because I would do it differently. You know, you always put your best stuff at the top, right? You put your most important stuff at the top. When I wrote for newspaper, there was, and you'll know this, the inverted pyramid, you know, you have this, you know, and I still kind of always held to that, but I was saying to one of my executive producers called and said, oh my God, that person buried that video in the story. If we had great video, we used to have the threes. My cameraman used to say, we'll show it 3 times if it was good surveillance video. The first time, no one knows it's coming, and they're calling their spouse in the kitchen saying, oh my God, come look at this guy jump over the bank, you know. So the second time, the person from the kitchen came, and the third time is when they call their kids down from upstairs. But you can always start with it and then back into the story. Anyways, it is a great job. It is, the media can be your friend. I just want you to take from today, I hope you can take that and learn how to deal with them. And know who to trust, yes. And I'm not saying open your heart to them every moment if something's going on just like that. But use them. Use them and know that you can, for the most part, trust them. And ask around if you're not sure. And if you're really not sure, my number's on the bottom of the handout. Call me and I'll tell you if you can trust them. Anyways, thank you for listening. I hope this helped you. I would love to answer some questions. So if somebody has some, please just ask away. Yes. You want to take the mic? Did you have a hand up? Oh, yeah.
That's okay, just shut it out.
I'm sorry. It seems so often that reporters already know the headlines when they come to get information, and they've got a slant on the story. How do you handle that? How do you get past
Okay, well, and that is a really good question, because you are right. I've even seen reporters who have written the story before they get to the story. And you're right. So, okay, sometimes your desk will say, you know what? Yeah, they'll say, you know, like there's for example, they'll say there's this hoarder house in Ypsilanti, and this woman's got like 50 dogs and 30 cats, and we're going to tease the story and everything. And then I get to the story, and I would see that there were 4 dogs and 3 cats, and it wasn't really, you know. It's up to the reporter to get there and to know what the story is. If a reporter has it, and then they're trying to like manipulate their people they're interviewing to make it that way. Is that what you're saying? They're trying to, you know, it just has to, if it was about you, I'm just saying hypothetically, you'd have to drum into the person and say, that isn't the story. Listen to me, that is not the story. You know, that, and then if they still do it, because sometimes our bosses, boy, they just want to, sometimes the tease is better than the story, isn't it? The promo for it, coming up. I'll even watch it at home, they'll say something's coming up, and then I watch the story, and the tease is better than the story. So, but it would be your responsibility if it was about you or something, I think. It shouldn't have to be, but if you feel that way, then you need to say, look, I can see that you already have your mind made up about this. Please listen to me. That isn't what it is. You know, press on it. Because then if they run the story and it isn't what it is, and you told them it isn't what it is, then you call their boss and say, you know what, I'm so disappointed. And I feel like you need to either correct that, get that straight, you know. Anybody else? Yes. Go ahead.
So I work with a lot of small businesses who are doing great things that seem newsworthy, but they can't get the attention of the real press.
Right.
They can hire a PR agent.
Well, you know, it's fun. It's so funny you asked me that, because yesterday I had lunch with this woman who wanted me to have lunch because she wanted to just kind of, I think, film me. She was with my sister, so she came and joined us, but she was asking me some marketing questions like that. She said, should we buy ads? Do we have to hire someone? The thing is this, is that if you want your story out there, there always needs to be a little hook in the story, like a hook. Something different about it, you know, because if it's a story like somebody emailed me the other day and said, my so-and-so, no, they emailed my husband, they said, it's a former colleague, somebody's turning 100, how do we get coverage? You know what, thank God, tons of people turn 100 now, that used to be different, but I said, is he a veteran? Did he serve in one of the wars? Is he alert and can tell? So if you have a story and you would like to get some coverage for it, try to find the most special thing about what it is. Can you give me a quick example, like for hypothetically, like for example, what kind of business?
Put me on the spot.
No, I mean, give me an example of sort of like.
I used to run an indoor air quality company, and we would raise several $1,000s to send kids with asthma to camp.
Okay, so then you know what you need. Then find a family who went to that camp, whose kid does have asthma, and let them come and say how appreciate that. And I'm glad you asked me that, because that was in the speech that I sort of didn't read. But I was going to say that if you do call a press conference for your business because you're doing something wonderful, try to find someone who's benefiting from the wonderful and have them there. I mean, it's the same thing Crime Stoppers does now they do it all the time. When they offer a reward, they try to have a victim's family. Because if you've got that hook there, and then when you send out a little release, say, you know, we've done this air quality, and it's safe, we've sent these kids to camp, and we've got a family who this child had asthma and so enjoyed camp, would have never had the opportunity. Make it, you know, get that hook in there. And sometimes follow up with a phone call, because there's a million press releases. It could get shoved into a pile, like, you know, a pile on a desk, like sometimes you might think a resume would. Make a follow-up, say, did you get the press release? Can I talk to your assignment editor? Because I want to tell you we're having this great thing. And here's the other thing, you might have something that's so-so, and it might be a slow news day and it might get covered. You might have something that's amazing, and then there's a hazmat fire and it doesn't get covered. I can't tell you how many times people have gone out of their way to be available for me, and then I'm on the way to interview them and the station said, we need to send you to a breaker. And then I thought, oh, I've got to call that person. Which brings me one other thought I wanted to tell you. I'm just kind of getting these thoughts in my mind, because Rob had asked me. Some of you have such great expertise in a field. If you are, say, an air quality expert, you might want to be used on television as an expert. And if you do, put yourself out there. Call the station, say, you know, I had the music department, or I had whatever, or I could talk about this, or I could talk about legal issues, or I could talk about roofs, you know, the roofing. And put yourself out there. But if you do put yourself out there, know that they're going to want you to be available, you know, and give them a cell number. There's many times when the bailout, the auto bailout, the turnaround specialist, you know, those guys that turn around the businesses, they'd say, you know, I'm at my kid's soccer game, I'm not dressed. And I'd say, it's okay, Pat. I'll just say that you were at a soccer game. It's okay, we're only going to shoot you from here up, you know. But make yourself available. But get a hook on a story. And that's a good way to get it covered. Yes?
Talk just a moment about the decision-making that goes into deciding what's on the news.
And that's a great question, too, because they have these meetings, they have these editorial meetings. Like I said, don't kill the messenger. They decide what stories are going to be covered. Usually they'll write them on a board. And, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, but, you know, sex sells, and, you know, sleaze sells, and, you know, it just, air quality doesn't always sell. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? I mean, it's good to have, but you want good air quality.
Roger's big on the sleaze,
but you know, but I'm saying that, you know, it's just, it's a great question, because sometimes there'll be a story that is really the most important story of the day, and it's down here, because it isn't the, I don't know, like the sexiest story. I don't mean, and I'm not talking about sex literally, but like the bridal, where's Rachel? Like the bridal salon, that was a kind of story. Right now, Channel 7 is in a mode where it's like a taking action for you, which is good. I can't tell you, I mean, there was a woman who had an abandoned house that kept catching fire next to her home. She was a widow, and she kept asking the city to tear it down. It was in some parts of Detroit, the houses are literally 10 feet apart, no driveways, in southwest Detroit. And I went there and I pushed and pushed, and I got that house taken down for her. So we could take action. So taking action stories, flashy stories. I mean, you know, right now the emergency manager stories, the bankruptcy, the mayoral election, but there is an editorial, you know, meeting, and reporters are in on it. And we can put our 2 cents in it. I mean, I might come and say, you know, there's this really good story about this guy who's air quality, and he sends kids to camp for asthma, and he's got a kid for me to talk to. I mean, seriously. make a friend with a reporter, and you'll see that it helps. But they do have meetings, and it's what's going to grab the headlines. You know, and one more thing too, if you've noticed now, Channel 4 has a 4 o'clock news show now. We have a 5, a 6, and a 7. Nobody else has a 7. But I wouldn't be surprised if Channel 7, and I have no inside knowledge, maybe comes up with a Channel 4, not a Channel 4, a 4 o'clock. You never know. You know, it's such a competitive business. It is amazing, really. It's amazing if you could see my day. I wish that this is my makeup person that comes to homicide scenes. I mean, people don't get it. Some people don't get it. I even think that my husband, my kids, do you know that when I went away, retired, my kids, who are grown, I mean, I have grandkids, came to my going away party. Not the one at the station, but my colleagues gave me one at a bar. And all the prosecutors, Brooks Patterson, Mark Hackle, Kim Worth, everybody came. People I've known for 30 years. But people, regular people, whose lives didn't really realize, I don't think the kids realize what an impact this business has on people's lives. You know, sometimes you can really make or break somebody's day, and you know, by helping them in that way and getting their story out there. Anybody else? Yes?
So you've been talking about having trust in these kinds of things. Can you say a little bit about the ethics of the media, the professional media,
Yes.
and how that's, if you think that's changed over time?
And two things I want to say, and you brought up another point about changing. She said, talk about ethics. How do you, because I talked about trust and stuff, ethics and reporting. You know, the bottom line is, sadly, occasionally there'll be a reporter who doesn't have good ethics or standards or even moral. I mean, would you go interview somebody who you knew had Alzheimer's? Really? I mean, I wanted to say, I was with a reporter once who had her foot in a man's door who said he didn't want to be on. But he had witnessed something. And I had already talked to him and he told me no, so I went away. But when I saw her go up there, I was going to go again because, you know, I just wanted to see what happened. And he said no to her, no, 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 no. She literally had her foot in his door and wouldn't let him close that door. I said, come on, you don't have to show your face. He finally gave in. He probably got so exasperated that, and so I took the audio too. But I'm just saying that I think that, like I was saying to this gentleman, if somebody does a story and it's totally wrong or it's, you know, then you call their editor. If somebody does something that's just underhanded or sneaky, then they shouldn't be in the business. I mean, you really need, I would think that the majority of reporters should be able to be trusted and should have good, you know, but sometimes I think the pressure gets to them to get the story. Of course you want to get the story. Sometimes it's just luck. What if you're in traffic and somebody's going to come out and you miss them? You miss it. But you just have to, I guess you just have to find who you trust. And you can ask around too. You could ask around. Because I have seen people do things that I would never do. Yeah. Not a lot. Yes.
I have a question, Cheryl, about gender and women in the workplace, because you're kind of a pioneer. Donna also is a pioneer of having, you know, grown up and then in an era where women weren't doing much. Could you just comment on what it's like to be a woman?
And this is a good example of it. When I applied to WXYZ Radio the first time, they told me that my voice wasn't low enough like a man. I literally took a class from Wayne State in diaphragmatic breathing. Seriously, I did. Now, I'm happy I did, because it helps me with my voice. I mean, it helped me to control my voice, because you know, if you get to a scene and it's your adrenaline's pumping and you're starting to talk, you know, your voice can kind of, your vocal cords kind of tighten up and you can kind of get, not squeaky, but you sound nervous. I don't, because I will take those breaths. But so at the beginning, women weren't doing a lot of the stuff, you know. But I mean, it's been 34 years. I've done, you know, 25 at 7, 5 at J. I was at one radio station for 1 year and then a writer. So I've been in about 34 years. I've seen changes, but it's not like it was 50 years ago, you know, like maybe when Barbara Walters started. It's not quite the same. I mean, you see a lot of women in the media, you know. And so I think it wasn't, I was never, only once was I treated different because I was a woman. It was pouring rain, it was a radio story, there was a fire, it was in Southfield, at a hotel. I was the only female in the group of reporters. and the person said, "Come on, Cheryl, come out of the rain." Just to me, because I was a woman. But so I just said, okay, good, fine, that's good, I'll go in. But the other thing I was going to tell you is about the cell phones, because somebody who brought up the point about the phones, that you never know. Things have so changed now. I used to run to a payphone when I was on the radio to file my reports, and now you can watch the news right on this phone. Also, the last year I was at Channel 7, we did something called MMJ, and that's called Multimedia Journalist. I actually learned to shoot and edit my own stuff. Isn't that interesting? You know what that is then, okay. I only did it one day a week because I wouldn't do it at night. They would never send me at night, but they had me work 4 nights in one day, and on that one day, I would take a camera and all the equipment. I was trained, and I went and I shot my story, even my own stand-ups. I would stand up and then set the camera on the tripod over there and try to and I'm really glad that I did that, because up until the day I left, I at least knew how to do it. And so if my cameraman was busy setting up the live truck, I mean, we could get to a scene, we had to get on the air in 20 seconds, less than a minute. So I would run in the back of the truck and start editing a soundbite or editing something, I could do that. So we learned, but look at the difference. And so you know what? Anything you do now could be caught. They could take a picture of it. They could take a picture. They could get some audio. When I went to Ann Arbor this last time, there was flooding. We couldn't get a live shot out because it was lightning. You can't put the mast up on the truck. On this phone, not this phone, this is my new cell, but on my work phone, the one where my doctor called and gave the wrong person the results, I Skyped. And then they took chopper video of the flooding in Ann Arbor. Yes?
Yeah, that reminds me that I think it's in LA, NBC affiliate there has a feed for people to send their own videos for breaking events.
Right.
And they choose whether to put it on the air or not. But they have like hundreds of remote reporters that way.
Well, they do, and now when there's like the tornado, you said you went, I was out there. I don't know if you saw the Channel 7 trucks, but we were out there for days when the tornado hit. But people started sending video in. Now you can see video funnels. You can, it's just, yes.
So this leads me to the question of, if we've got, everybody in the whole world has now become a reporter, things may get up in the air that are not necessarily truly representative of what's going on.
That's true.
If you happen to be one of those people who now is being misrepresented because someone has taken something out of context or gets posted or whatever, is there anything that you can do for damage control?
Well, on a television station, you can call, because people have called, which is a really disappointment. You've got this great interview, and then they have second thoughts about it after, and they call and say, would you let Cheryl know we don't want to be on or something? Oh, it's so disappointing. But if it's just a general public, there's almost, you're right, there's almost, if somebody throws something of you on YouTube, unless it's something that's obscene, there's almost nothing you can do. And Google too. You know that this is really funny, but somebody, a relative of mine who I barely know, did a family tree and put it on Google. It was out there, it was on Google, and it had my home address and the addresses of all my kids. It was a relative who did that, a distant relative. And I called Google and I said, I don't want my kid, I'm a reporter. I don't want, there could be somebody who's not happy with me or something, or a criminal who I've covered or whatever. I had to go to the source, and he had to contact and have it taken off. But with not this day and age, that's why you don't know. You could say to one reporter, and that's the other thing, when you're a good, honest person, you could, I don't want my kid, I'm a reporter, I don't want, there could be somebody who's not happy with me or something, or a criminal who I've covered or whatever. I had to go to the source, and he had to contact and have it taken off. But with not this day and age, that's why you don't know. You could say to one reporter, and that's the other thing, when you're a good, honest person, you could lose out on something. That's why I walked up that day, that reporter put her foot in the door. Even though I knew that man didn't want to talk, I just went to see if she got anything. And we got audio, not video. But with these phones now, someone could take a picture of you, or they could be recording your voice and you wouldn't even know it.
Cheryl, could you say, just who's some of the more fascinating, both positive and negative people? You mentioned Kwame and Coleman, but...
Well, I have interviewed every president who's alive. You know, I've been able to, not Obama, but I mean, I've been there when there's been like a group interview. So the presidents are wonderful. When the Pope came, it was wonderful. Nelson Mandela, absolutely wonderful. You know, but I've also interviewed killers in jail. You know, it's just, you know, and certainly all the governors I've interviewed. It's just what I've done with. I mean, it's an amazing job. It really is. But believe me, if you are good at what you do, you know, in any job, of course, you always want to be right on the mark. But when you're in a job that's so visible, you need to be so careful. And now that I'm not in it, the reason I want to teach it is because I want to share that with other young up-and-coming journalists, because I see some stuff on TV that I think, I don't really think that's what she meant to say, or I don't really think that's how I would have said it. I mean, everybody's got their own style, but that's my biggest adjustment. Yes.
Somebody talked about how everybody's a reporter now, and also, so in some ways, it's like these giant...
Taking jobs away?
No, that giant high school clique, and then there's also this like point of journalism, you know, espousing really strongly held, possibly divisive views, and that's a real moneymaker for a lot of people and things like that. So you talk about teaching young people, but it seems like it's changing so much, and how do you see that whole job evolving when the whole thing is kind of atomized?
It has changed.
And also becoming really bimodal or trimodal.
It has changed a lot, but this is what I believe, and I truly believe this from the bottom of my heart. The core of what we do will not change. The who, what, where, when, and how will never change. The honesty, the integrity, the respectfulness, all of that will never change. So if I can teach that to young journalists, and then they can take their MMJ, which I can do anyways, but their whatever, and integrate that with what they're going to do in the new era of journalists. You know, it's funny, when I retired, I'll just tell you this, when I made my announcement in the newsroom, everybody came in and we were crying. It was very emotional. But so I was trying to lighten things up a little bit, so I said, you know, I just want to teach the next generation of us. And then I said, oh, wait a minute, you guys are the next generation. Because, you know, I'm on the older end of the reporter scale. And then I also joked to them, I said, you know, I don't think the senior citizen bus is going to take me to a homicide. I was kind of joking around, but anyways, it's been great talking to you. I'll be here if you want to just talk to me. I did have some handouts, and you know what, some tips, but at the bottom of the tips, I put my phone, my cell phone, I have a new cell phone number, and my email. And believe me, I mean this too. If you have a question that you want to ask me about something, call me or email me. I mean, and because I have new cards made too, but I didn't want to bring them. That's sort of like, isn't that sleazy? Just say, here's my card, here's my card. I mean, I went there, this is so funny, somebody else retired, I won't tell you who it is, and he's got like a person, like the kind of a little sidekick, and we were honored by city council, and his little sidekick was passing out cards to everybody. It's kind of weird. Thank you very much, though.
That's great. Thank you, that's fabulous. And I have to tell you, I've seen Cheryl a lot on TV, but I never saw her more excited in, I think it was 1963, when she was the cheerleader at Jennison Fieldhouse.
That's right.
And Ferndale High School won the state basketball. So Cheryl was the great cheerleader.
I'm telling you about that.
So she's the reason we won that basketball game.
It's funny, when the Detroit News came and did a story about me leaving, they said, so how old are you? So I said, you know, I don't love giving my age. I said, my kids are 40 and 41, and I've got 3 grandkids. I said, figure it out. So anyway, so then, okay, so they said, okay, well, we'll respect that. So they did and everything, and they wrote something, Cheryl, just so that, you know, whatever. And then another magazine came and did an article and said, so how old are you? And I said, you know what, is it really relevant? Does it really matter? You know, I've got grown kids and grandkids, you know, figured out. So then he wrote the story. He said, Cheryl, who's a 1964 graduate of Ferndale High School. See, you can't hide anything, right?
But she graduated at 16. No. So
I graduated early, I was a prodigy.
Yeah, we have a tradition of people having a couple things they might want to say to the group. I know people have to leave. I have put some cards on the table. I've turned my Monday Dr. Rob tips into I always wanted to be an advice columnist. I was one of the few men that actually read Dear Abby in the newspapers. So if you have questions, I'd love to have you to send those to me. And I'm also going to interview some people like I did Cheryl last week. There's some people that I want to ask questions. So if you have either people that you want to ask me a question or people that I should interview, please do so. Next month, we're going to have Lloyd Carr as the speaker. He won't be quite as good as Cheryl, but he's pretty darn good. And he'll talk more about football than Cheryl did. But but we're going to move to a new spot, which is out by the Zingerman's Bakehouse. It's out by the new Costco. So we'll let you know. Anything you want to say about that, Rachel? No. Okay, so we'll be out there.
She got her bridal dress, she's good.
She'll be out next week.
Cheryl, but Rachel will be married by 2 weeks from the day she's getting married. So anybody has any... And she will be wearing a dress, so that's good. So that's my announcement. We have some other great programs coming up next year. We'll send all those out to you. And then Lee, you want to tell something about Michigan Theater or whatever? Here, let me use the mic for that.
Okay. Thank you, Rob. I just want to say one quick thing about a new film series that we have on Monday nights. And I want to say it because I want to thank United Bank and Trust for being the supporter of this new series we have called Monday Funnies, which is a comedy series. So it's classic comedies every Monday night. Everything from Dr. Strangelove to Blues Brothers to Monty Python to This Is Spinal Tap and everything in between. And so thanks again to United Bank and Trust. And it's Mondays at 7, only $10 or $7.50 if you're a Michigan Theater member. Thank you.
How much should I pay as a Michigan Theater member and a senior? Do I get even like deeper discounts? Or?
Members are a little cheaper than seniors are $8.
$8. Okay, I get it. A special discount. Any other things coming up that people want to say? Patricia, I wonder if you have anything to say as the publisher or anything you wanted to add with Cheryl? I mean, it's some really good stuff. I know that...
On or off the record?
What you said, your story was such a good little story there. The only difference is that when you're in the print media, they don't see your face as much. You know what I mean? So you could, not that you would have ever done it anyways. I'm sure the moment they heard it, they just froze up.
Absolutely. I mean, it happens. And those of you who know me know that if you share something with me in confidence, I respect that.
That's what I said. Same with
my, my feeling about integrity as a business and with my personal life.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting experience to go through that, and people just freeze up, and then you don't hear the rest of the story.
Yeah. Talk about the change in the media. We've talked about this in Ann Arbor because we do not have a newspaper.
But you have a web, isn't there a web Ann Arbor News? Or?
Not anymore. I mean, now the web has gone, it's really confusing because the web now has gone to MLive, so it's really the statewide, and now they've redone the Ann Arbor News, but who knows what that is, so it's... Which articles? Okay, but I mean, it's a really strange, we can't really quite understand.
You don't even have an Ann Arbor patch?
We really have, we have a couple of reporters who are, I think they're basically pretty young. I mean, they're like right out of college, and we don't really have, so that the Observer is a great spot in the, it's become a really important resource, and you have an online version now, but just to find out what's going on this weekend, you have to go online. It's really hard to figure anything out.
And if you have young reporters, that's another thing too. That it's even more important for you to follow up and say, I just want to be sure that you understand what we just talked about. I mean, because some don't. They haven't. Sometimes you have to live life to even get it. You know what I'm saying? And so if it's a really rookie reporter, a young reporter, because that's the person. That's great, but you want to make sure that they totally get it. They really understand it. You don't want to get burned. You don't want to. The worst thing to do is to read something that isn't what you said.
One of the challenges right now is that I can say that. One of the challenges with in the business is that so many of the reporters now are freelance because the full-time jobs with benefits are just not available. So they don't have the training, they don't have the experience, and then the story comes out and it hasn't been well researched. the information isn't accurate. So thank you for what you're doing, is moving forward, spending your time to talk to some of these young reporters and let them know how important it is to get the facts right. Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you, Cheryl. Let's give her a great hand. Thank you so much for making your phone number available. That's
Take my number and email. And
Cheryl, you mentioned one thing about assignment editors. What can you explain when you
the assignment editor is the person that you would, if you call the station, you could ask to talk to the assignment. That's the person, not that makes the decisions, but who lists all the stories that are coming up.
That's an important resource.
So if you, and really it's a good idea to get all the emails of all the stations and the newspapers, so you can use the media for positive reasons.
You know.
Thank you.